Welcome back into the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap. I am obviously very excited today as my Boston Celtics have advanced to the Eastern Conference Finals, triumphing in a Game 7 that ended up not being particularly close. So it was nice and stress-free for me, Sap. They will now face the Miami Heat in the Eastern Conference Finals. And in the West, we saw, I think, a result that nobody outside of Dallas felt it was going to happen, and the Mavericks just absolutely not just pounded, but obliterated, destroyed, whatever word you want to use, the Phoenix Suns, who had the best record wire to wire in the NBA. They crushed them, and the Mavericks advanced to the Western Conference Finals to face the Golden State Warriors. So now, Sap, we have a Final Four remaining. What was the most surprising thing to you other than the result of the Dallas game? Again, that was surprising to everybody. What else stood out to you yesterday?
Just the blowout fashion, right? The Celtics win 109-81, so they win by 28 points, and that wasn't even the biggest blowout yesterday because Dallas went out and beat Phoenix 123-90 in Game 7. Great performance by Luka Doncic, not a surprise, and a horrible performance by the Phoenix Suns, who were the best team this year, won 64 games, but laid an egg in this series by not winning Game 7. So I think the margin of victories were surprises. I wasn't surprised that the Celtics won, but the size of that victory was impressive, and the same thing for Dallas. So you would think you get to Game 7, it'll be a little closer. Well, Celtics win by 28, Dallas wins by 33, and now we're down to 4 teams that you could probably throw a blanket over these 4 teams, Jet, because just look at the win totals from the regular season. Miami and Golden State, 53 wins each. Dallas, 52 wins. Celtics, 51. Any of these 4 teams could win the championship.
Sure. Yeah, it seems that way right now, Sep, without a doubt. You said this in the last round that you felt that any of the teams in the last round could win the championship. And I pushed back specifically with Memphis and Dallas. And clearly you had the right idea with Dallas because the way they're playing, they're certainly capable of it. I still think that their roster is not particularly good. But as I tweeted out yesterday, and I think a lot of people are coming to the same conclusion, this is sort of reminiscent of that LeBron James 06-07 Cavs team that was not a good roster, but LeBron was just, playing at another level. And that's sort of what Luka's doing right now. And I actually think that this Mavericks roster is even a little bit better than that Cavs roster. I hate giving LeBron so much credit, Sap, but that Cavs roster was unfathomably bad. And this Mavs roster is okay. I wouldn't say it's terrible, but it's not particularly good. Like, they don't have another guy who I think is going to make an all-star. I mean, maybe Dinwiddie could make another all-star game. Brunson, I guess, could, but I don't think any of those guys are particularly, great second fiddle guys to Luka. And yet they just knocked out the team that had the best record in the NBA all season long on their home court. And they did it. And they won by 33 points, and it wasn't that close.
Yeah, they were touching on 50 oftentimes in Game 7. And that's a good comparison because that was LeBron's 4th year in the league. This is Luka's 4th year in the league. Luka's kind of modeled his game after LeBron's game, and there are a lot of similarities. LeBron, a much better defender and a better athlete than Luka, but the rest of the game is very similar. And he was big, but he also got great performances from Spencer Dinwiddie, who was massive in Game 7. So, LeBron had Boobie Gibson, Larry Hughes, and a bunch of other guys there that he brought to the finals before they got swept by San Antonio. They were really bad. And actually, that series against San Antonio, the games were pretty close. It's just at the end, San Antonio's experience and talent won out over LeBron and his, less than stellar roster. I think Dallas has a chance against Golden State. Golden State has looked really good throughout the playoffs, but they've had some bumps also. I mean, they were getting blown up by 55 in Game 5 to Memphis. Once again, Golden State very fortunate in a sense because, they played Denver in the first round, which was Nikola Jokic and a depleted roster. So they won that in 5 games. And then they go on and take on Memphis, who lost 2 really close games to Golden State and then lost their best player, John Morant, midway through the series. So Golden State, which has sometimes had a horseshoe up their ass throughout this entire 6-7 year run, always seem to run into a team that has someone missing. Well, I think they're going to get a fairly healthy Dallas Mavericks team. And by the way, the Celtics were fortunate in round 2 to face a Milwaukee team without Middleton.
Yeah, no,
Year,
Seth, you'd be
Phoenix,
hard pressed to go throughout the
it
playoffs in
happens.
history and find a team that won the title that didn't catch some bit of luck. I mean, it rarely happens where a team faces every team at full strength and still wins the title. You got to have some luck as involved.
Look at Phoenix last year, right? I mean, first series, Anthony Davis gets hurt with the Lakers up 2-1 and up 10 points in game 4. The Lakers would have won that series if Davis doesn't get hurt and Phoenix gets bumped in the first round. Then they move on and play a round later. They take care of things with Denver, which was, again, without Jamal Murray. And then in the conference finals, you're playing a Clipper team without Kawhi Leonard. So, yeah, you catch some breaks and you have to take advantage of that. It only seems that when LeBron wins a title, there's always some excuse how it was easy for him to win a title, whether it was Draymond Green being suspended
right,
in Game 5 in 2016, right, or it was a bubble. Like no one else was playing in the bubble except for the Lakers in 2020. So, but this is the way it works. I mean, the one team that we can all agree on in the last 6 or 7 years that was just miles ahead of everyone was the 16-17 Warriors, who lost one game in the playoffs. Even the next year, when they were repeating as champions, they got fortunate that Chris Paul got hurt towards the end of that Western Conference Finals against Houston, right? So if Paul doesn't get hurt in game 5, I think Houston knocks off the defending champion Warriors and they go to the finals to play Cleveland instead of Golden State. So, Toronto had a couple of lucky breaks in winning their title. The Lakers won fairly handily in the bubble, but there's always this excuse people throw out there that it was a bubble. Again, because it's LeBron James, people have to make an excuse to make it sound like he had it easier than everyone else. And last year, Milwaukee,
always
he
has
it easier. Yeah, he played some suck teams in the finals like Jordan did. Jordan got to play Portland and an ancient Laker team, and Phoenix with Charles Barkley and a bunch of role players, and then
we're all elite teams. You're
all elite teams.
Yeah.
Seattle with Gary Payton and all the Hall of Famers, and the overrated Karl Malone and John Stockton and the Utah Jazz.
What's interesting though, Sap, is that you look at the teams that are left now: Golden State, Dallas, Boston, Miami. Mm-hmm. All those teams, except for Dallas, have sort of caught a break. Dallas has had sort of the toughest road when you talk about playing teams at full strength. They play the Jazz, who weren't really missing any key players. They beat them after going down in that series. And then the last series, you had a full strength Phoenix team that wasn't at full strength in the first round, and they beat them too. Versus, like we said, Celtics played the Bucks without Middleton. The Heat played a certainly well less than 100% Joel Embiid, who missed the first 2 games of that series. And you alluded to the Warriors' path already, Sap. So Dallas is the one team that hasn't really caught a break so far.
And Luka was hurt the first few games against Utah.
That's right. Yeah, in fact, they've been behind.
Who even knows is he's 100%? Although you can't really tell with Luka because he kind of plays at his own speed. So who knows if the calf is still an issue? He just kind of ambles along out there at his own merry pace. But look, we talked about that these 4 teams had essentially the same record this year: 2 53-win teams, a 52-win team, and a 51 team. And the other common denominator here is, Jet, and this is something that you like to hear because you're a defensive guy. These are the 4 best teams in basketball defending the 3, right? The Celtics are number 1, Miami number 2, Golden State number 3, Dallas number 4 in terms of defending the 3-point shot. I don't think that's a coincidence that they're the 4 remaining teams.
No, that would make sense. I mean, if that stat is probably something now that people are going to look at pretty closely throughout the regular season going forward in terms of trying to predict a postseason success. I think that tells you the story right there. And we saw a great example of that yesterday with the Celtics in Milwaukee, is that Milwaukee's defensive strategy was to not defend the 3 at all. And it killed them in game 7. Grant Williams had, his signature game of his career, and every 3 he took and every 3 he made was uncontested, wide open. And so, sometimes in the NBA, you live by the 3, you die by the 3, but you have to now, there's too many. Every team has at least 1 or 2 adept 3-point shooters that if you leave them wide open, they're going to knock it down. And so if you don't make a concerted effort to strategize around that, you saw exactly what can happen to you. And that's what happened to Milwaukee the other day. Milwaukee, not a great 3-point shooting team, and their defensive strategy is to not cover the 3-point line that much. And the 3-point disparity in the Celtics and Bucks game told the entire story of why the Celtics were able to blow out the Bucks in that game. The Bucks finished 4 of 33 from 3. The Celtics 22 of 55. There's the game right there. That's all you need to know.
Milwaukee shot 12% from three. The Celtics 40% from three. Jet, in the series, the Celtics averaged 8 more made threes per game than Milwaukee. So they're getting off to a 24-0 start on made threes, right? Because they're hitting 8 more threes than Milwaukee game in and game out. And that was Milwaukee's strategy. I don't know if Milwaukee is going to have to adapt to how the league is now, and leaving teams wide open from three isn't all that great, especially if the team is going to hit 40% against you, because there's a lot of really good shooters in this league. Big men, middle-sized player, point guards, they can all shoot threes. And we saw that yesterday. Grant Williams, he was a volume shooter yesterday. He was 7 for 18. He actually didn't shoot any better in terms of percentage than he has all year. In fact, it was a little below his season percentages. It's just they seem to be big ones every time Milwaukee tried to come back. He was always hitting.
Except, go watch it again. All 18 of those were wide open. None of them were contested. All wide open. And
I give Mark Jackson a ton of credit on the telecast, saying if they're going to give you that, you've got to take it. If you don't make them, it's up to the coach to take you out if he thinks it's a bad shot. They were all good shots. I mean, whether they were his corner three or even out onto the side, they just let him shoot because they pack the paint. They're difficult to drive against. They tried to get the ball out of the hands of Jason Tatum, and give Jason Tatum a lot of credit because he became a facilitator yesterday. And I think in the last 2 games showed why he eventually will be a top 5 player. He's just on the precipice of that right now. And again, if he goes on and wins a championship this year, then you have to put him in the top 5 because that championship does mean a lot. But yeah, Milwaukee decided not to defend the three, and they couldn't hit anything. I mean, their role players were horrible in games 6 and 7, whether it be Grayson Allen, who I still don't understand what he was doing on the court, 22, 24 minutes a night. He's a liability on defense, and he couldn't hit the rim, let alone make a basket. It felt like the Bucks were playing 4-on-5, 3-on-5 oftentimes. And then Giannis, I think at one point in game 7, Jet, especially in the second half, he just ran out of gas. He missed 5 layups or very makeable shots in the second half. He was just spent.
But I agree. He was spent. You know, it was a long series, a very physical series, and he was getting beat up. And I agree. But I saw today your guy Skip Bayless. I know he's not actually your guy, Sab, was saying, I can't believe Shannon saying he's the best player in the world. The best player in the world wouldn't have a performance like that. Like, he had 25 points, 20 rebounds, and 9 assists. Like, what do you want the guy to do? Seriously, people who won't say he's the best player in the world. And like, listen, I think right now, if the Mavericks win the title this year, I think Luka has a legitimate case to say I'm the best player in the world now. I think he can take the crown from Giannis, but I still think right now, I don't know how you can take it away from Giannis again. Okay, so Skip wants you to believe that that's a bad performance from Giannis the other day. So 25, 20, and 9 is a bad performance. Okay, then he's the best player in the world, because I don't know how many players can do that in a game 7. That's still a great performance, Sap.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of misses in there. And even if he made those shots, they would have lost by, 18 instead of 28. Wouldn't have been a huge difference.
No help.
He had no help. I mean, Holiday, played well in the series, but he was not efficient as a shooter. He shot around 35% for the series. That's not good.
Connaughton had 0 of 6 from 3 yesterday, Holiday.
It was terrible. It was just terrible. Brook Lopez got off to a good start, disappeared in the second half. Grayson Allen was horrible. Bobby Portis struggled yesterday. Pat Connaughton struggled yesterday. Wes Matthews Jr., looked older than me out there. I mean, they don't have a lot after Giannis and Holiday. And again, they didn't have their second best player in Middleton. And as far as Giannis being the best player in the world, yes, he is. He's the defending champ. I think maybe if Luka wins it, he can make a claim for that, but he's still a liability on defense. But we see what he does on offense. It's spectacular. I think he's the most skilled guy in the league, especially with the ball in his hands, because he's an elite passer, great rebounder, and he can score in a myriad of ways. And he's leading that team to the conference finals, which is quite an accomplishment. But, I do like Skip because he's a professional troll, even though his 2 least favorite athletes happen to be LeBron James and Aaron Rodgers, my 2 favorite athletes,
right?
Least favorite athletes. But as far as that, he constantly says that Kevin Durant's the best player in the game. Did Skip watch Kevin Durant against the Celtics? Let me ask you this. You're a Celtics fan. Who scared you more, Durant in a 4-game sweep against the Celtics, or Giannis in losing in 7 games against the Celtics? The answer is Giannis, right?
Yeah, Giannis for a 4-game stretch averaged like 40 and 15.
Right. Yeah, he's put up 20 rebound games like he's Wilt Chamberlain.
I didn't watch Skip today, Sap. Did he go back to the Kevin Durant's the best player in the world thing today?
No, he kind of said the Celtics beat the best player in the world in Durant, and now they beat the alleged best player in the world in Giannis.
So who's he have at one? Still Durant?
Probably. I mean, I'm trying to think who you
crazy.
have. I mean, Durant sucked against the Celtics. He had one good game against the Celtics. Giannis's bad games are still impressive because he was getting double-digit rebounds, and he nearly had a triple-double yesterday. And again, he struggled at times, wasn't able to seal the deal. But I think the guy was just spent. And again, I'm going to bring LeBron James into the conversation because what the hell, why not? As great as Giannis is, he holds the title as the best player in the world, but he doesn't hold it as firmly as LeBron did for 10 or 12 years, because this is the time where LeBron's play continues to get better and better and better when you get to game 7, and then you get to the conference finals, then you get to the finals. I mean, he has more ways to beat you than Giannis, quite frankly. I mean, he's got a more well-rounded game. Giannis is a force, but he just doesn't have all the clubs in the bag like LeBron does. But I still think
but I think
the best player in the world. I don't,
LeBron, it was a unique circumstance happened that he was the best player in the world for, a long period of time.
Right.
So was Jordan. They're unique in that Giannis is an all-time great and is an easy. He could retire tomorrow and be considered an all-time great, in my opinion. But he's LeBron and Jordan, and those are unique circumstances.
Right.
I think I do think Giannis has some similarities to LeBron in terms of there's the two guys that stand out the most to me in terms of when they get ahead of steam in the open court that are the most dangerous because they're so strong. I see similarities there. The difference is, and I was saying this talking basketball with my dad the other day after we watched the game, is that I think the difference is that LeBron can get that head of steam and drive to the basket, and then at the last second throw behind the back pass, perfect to a guy on the corner. But then Giannis can't do that. Giannis is a good passer. LeBron's one of the greatest passers of all time. And I see what you've done here, and that you've forced me to compliment LeBron multiple times in this show, Sap. But hey, I'm gonna call it like I see it. But yeah, Giannis. Again, I'm not. I think that the only chance there's an argument to be made after the season that he's the best player in the world is if Luka wins a championship, because the roster and because of how well he's playing.
And he would have beaten a 64-win Phoenix team, which we all thought was the favorite to win the championship. Now he's going to have to beat Golden State with all that championship DNA. And then if he makes the finals, you've got a Celtic team, which has been the best team in basketball since mid-January, or he's going to have to beat the number 1 seeded Miami Heat that we know is just a tough team to take out. So, yeah, that discussion could be made in a month if Dallas is able to win this thing. And the crazy thing about Dallas is, and we know how well the Celtics have played basically the second half of the season, you realize Dallas is 36-12 over their final 48 games of the regular season. I mean, they played. Yeah,
they had a similar season to the Celtics in that way.
Really did. Yeah, I mean, they were, I think, 16-18 at one point, and then they went 36-12, played 750 ball over the final 3+ months. Then you beat Utah, which, beating Utah is not exactly a great accomplishment, but you still did it. And then you take out Phoenix. Game 7 in Phoenix, you blow them out. So Dallas has kind of done a lot of the same thing the Celtics have done in the second half of the year, and not getting as much publicity because I think it was a little bit more pronounced with the Celtics because they were just blowing teams out on the road too, which was interesting. And then they win 2 out of 3 in Milwaukee. Game 6, facing elimination, they come up with a huge game. Jason Tatum with 46. But I'm rooting for Celtics, Dallas. I'd love to see Luka and Jason Tatum, the 2 best players under the age of 25 in the league, go at it. I think it would be a fascinating battle. And, the Celtics do have a better roster. But when you got Luka and he's playing at that level, he's always going to give that Dallas team a chance.
Absolutely. I think that for the Celtics, it's also became more of a story because it was such an oddity too, in that, okay, well, they didn't really make any roster changes or anything like that. Like, how did they do this? Whereas Dallas, they traded their presumed second best player in Porzingis at the deadline, and they got Spencer Dinwiddie, and I think that that's helped them a lot. Porzingis might have a higher ceiling, literally, than Dinwiddie, but Dinwiddie's a better fit on this team, and I think it's freed up Luka a little bit more. It's made the bench of the Mavericks far more dangerous, and maybe that was why they started playing so much better, was just getting rid of that Porzingis burden on the team. And for the Celtics, again, like I said, it just sort of happened organically.
Yeah, I mean, what they had just worked. I mean, they added Al Horford, but that was in the offseason, and he did a great job. And then you made a couple of nice moves at the trade deadline. Derek White, who was god-awful in Game 7, but was really good in Games 3 through 6, made contributions in those 4 games against Milwaukee. So it wasn't like you added a major piece midway through the season. It's just that they kind of all looked in the mirror. Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Marcus Smart as your 3 guys that have been here for the longest period of time consecutively, and said, we've got to be better. And that's what they did. And they were able to put together a great, great run. And, if you're Milwaukee and you're Dallas and you've got these great players, the big key is to surround them with shooters. I think once Milwaukee looks to the offseason, that's what they're going to try to do, get good shooters to surround around Giannis, because he's going to be able to kick out and get some open shots for those guys. And same thing with Dallas, although Dallas is still playing, so we don't have to do a postmortem on them. I know later in the week we're going to kind of look at the 4 teams that lost in the second round and what their offseason is going to be like.
Yeah, we're definitely going to check in, because we're making sure to do that, because it should be an interesting offseason. Because these teams, again, like we said in the last round, Sap, all we thought had, or at least you thought, had a legitimate chance of winning the title. So going into the offseason, you would think that the mentality should be, okay, we're pretty close. What can we do to, just get us right over that little hill that we have? And for Milwaukee, it could be as simple as saying, well, we didn't have our second best player in Middleton. We just need him to be healthy. I don't know that they would have won against the Celtics in 7 games. It probably still would have gone 7. But Middleton's an excellent player, a multi-time All-Star, and certainly I wouldn't fault Milwaukee for saying we can just run it back, and if Middleton's healthy, we'll have a good chance of winning a title again.
Yeah, I mean, they could look at it that way, and maybe they're able to add a piece, make a trade, get some shooters, move on from Grayson Allen, who was just god awful in this series. I mean, he was by far, I thought, the worst player in this series.
He was excellent in their first round series against Chicago, and he was horrible against the Celtics.
Yeah, I mean, better defense the Celtics play, right? I mean, as much as Milwaukee struggled from 3, give the Celtics some credit, because they play defense. They'll defend the paint, but they'll also contest threes. And they're going to have to do this in the next series because, oh, by the way, Miami's the second best team defensively against the 3. They're the best shooting 3-point team in the NBA this year, hitting 38% of their threes. So that's where they win games. They're so much better shooting the 3 than giving up the 3. So that's going to be a major, major concern in this series against Miami.
Yeah, and for the Celtics, it's interesting in that you're playing 3 very, very different teams. In your path, the Nets were very different than the Bucks, and the Heat are very different than the Nets and the Bucks. I'd say Miami of those 3 are certainly the most complete team. You've played 2 teams that were more star heavy. Giannis, Durant, Kyrie, obviously, and the Heat have a star in Jimmy Butler, but they're much more the sum of their parts than, okay, let's let this guy let's ride, our superstar player. So you have that, like you said, they're a much better 3-point shooting team. And I'd say they're Milwaukee's a very good defensive team, obviously, but Miami plays different types of defense than Milwaukee. Like you said, they defend the 3 a lot more, not quite as good as defending the paint, though they do have one of the best paint defenders in the NBA, and Bam Adebayo. So it'll be a different challenge for the Celtics, without a doubt, just as the Celtics will be a different challenge for Miami, who in the last round faced, like you said, a hobbled Joel Embiid and an old James Harden.
Yeah, the Celtics are certainly better than Philadelphia. First of all, they just seem like they were on the same page, where Philadelphia is all over the place. Embiid was pissed off he didn't win the MVP and kind of mailed it in games 5 and 6. And Harden looks like he aged in dog years over the last year and a half. The Celtics will come with more ammo than Philadelphia. They're deeper than the 76ers. They'll play better defense than the 76ers. But Miami, as we know, is a very, very tough team. Jimmy Butler, you can make a case after Giannis and Luka that he's maybe been the 3rd best player in this postseason, along with, say, Jason Tatum. And Tatum has had some inefficient games. He'll put points on the board but not shoot well. But the way he stepped up in game 6 was monumental in staving off elimination in Milwaukee. But you can make a case that Jimmy Butler has been, at worst, the 3rd or 4th best player in this postseason, behind only Giannis and Luka and maybe Jason Tatum. So he's playing at a very, very high level. Adebayo is a sensational player. Obviously, we're going to have to see what the injury situation is with these 2 teams. Kyle Lowry's got a bulky hamstring. Marcus Smart is questionable. Sprained foot. Rob Williams was dressed for game 7, but never made it to the court, but now fewer limitations on his game. So we'll see what happens going into game 1, which is just, a day away. I mean, it's starting this thing up pretty quick.
The Celtics need Rob Williams in that series. they didn't need him so much against the Bucks because like you're not blocking Giannis at the rim very often. So it's like, good luck. In fact, when Rob Williams tried, he got elbows to the face, knee to the testicles, all those sort of things for his trouble. But you need him to counter the athleticism at a bio a little bit. And Jimmy Butler is one of the great cutters in the league. You need to be able to have to meet him at the rim. So Rob Williams, I think, is going to be important that he plays a factor in this series. The Celtics certainly are going to need all hands on deck. Obviously, we know they need Marcus Smart. And for Miami, Kyle Lowry always plays well against Celtics too. So having him be healthy is I think paramount for Miami too. Could end up being except that the healthiest team wins this series.
Yeah, kind of like the last series. No Chris Middleton, advantage Celtics. They're able to get through. They didn't have Rob Williams for most of that series, but they were able to break through, like you said, because, Giannis is pretty much indefensible going to the basket. I mean, as you said, he's going to dunk on you and hurt you in the process. Miami's a little bit different. Miami's a much better 3-point shooting team than Milwaukee, and they will go there, and it's a big part of their offense. And I think also you look at this, that Adebayo is someone that I don't think a lot of people talk about, but we saw what he did 2 years ago in the bubble. I thought he, can make a case he was the best player on the Heat in that series, along with Jimmy Butler. He's a tough matchup, so you need Rob Williams to combat him some. And you just look at how the teams are different than they were 2 years ago. I mean, the Celtics 2 years ago, had Kemba Walker and Daniel Tice playing a lot of minutes. Those minutes are now going to who? Rob Williams, if he's healthy, Al Horford, who I think kind of petered out at the end of the series. Not a surprise. After game 4, he looked like a 36-year-old player, but maybe he'll be rejuvenated for this series against Miami. But Grant Williams has stepped up in a couple of the games against Milwaukee. Hope he can do that against Miami. So I think the Celtics certainly are a little deeper and a better defensive team this time around than they were 2 years ago. And Miami, if Lowry plays, is also improved. And I think Tyler Hero just continually gets better. I was listening to local radio today. I'm not going to say what station or who the hosts were, but they kept talking about that Tyler Hero has regressed since 2 years ago. I don't know if they're aware that Tyler Hero averaged 21 points per game this year and was the 6th man of the year. Like, I think
they were talking about last year. He was
right.
He's better than this is his best professional season. I mean,
by far. I mean, you scored 21 a game off the bench.
Yeah,
and you're the 6th man of the year. I don't know.
He regressed in his second year, and now he's better than he was, in both of his years. This is his third year. This is his best year as a pro. So I don't know what they're talking about.
Well, that's why I maintain, there's very few people in the city of Boston that really know how to talk basketball. That's why you got to tune into the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap. We're
absolutely
good.
No, we know what we're talking about for sure, Sap. So okay, let's do this then, Sap. I think we've sufficiently previewed what this Celtics and Heat series is going to look like. Let's make a prediction then, Sap. Where do you see this? How do you see this playing out?
I got the Celtics in 6. I mean, I think if Lowry was healthy, then it would be a much more difficult call. But I think the Celtics will win this in 6. They'll probably take 2 in Miami. Look, they were able to win 2 in Milwaukee. I think Miami will find a way to win 1 game at the Garden. But I think the Celtics will wrap this thing up in game 6 at home. Tatum and Brown are playing at a very high level. Smart, after a disastrous finish to game 5, was outstanding in game 6 and 7. So those 3 players you have a lot of confidence in. Look, Grant Williams is going to have a big game and then another game where you're frustrated watching him play. Pritchard will do the same. But if you can get one of those guys to contribute, along with Derek White plays more like he did in games 3 through 6 against Milwaukee, then I think you've got something there. And again, if Rob Williams can contribute even 18, 20, 22 minutes a night, that'll be huge, just to be sure that Horford isn't trying to log 40 minutes a night. That's too much for a 36-year-old. I think the Celtics are a better team than Miami, slightly. But with the Lowry injury, I think that the Celtics will win this series in 6.
I'm going to say Celtics in 7. I just have so much respect for Miami and how they've constructed this team and how well coached they are. And I think they're difficult. I think it's going to be a feeling out process for the Celtics more so than it is for Miami, because you just came off of a grueling physical series with the Bucks, and so you have to adjust to a very different type of team. And Miami is physical, but not like Giannis. No one's physical like Giannis, and you're going to have to adjust to a team that really likes to take 3-pointers versus Milwaukee, who I'd say at best reluctantly takes 3-pointers. So I think it's a big adjustment, and I think it's going to go 7. How important, Sap, is it for the Celtics to split these first two games in Miami?
You obviously want to split because you're going to have to win at least one game in Miami to win this series. And I think likely too, because Miami can come here and win. You got veteran players like Butler, and if Lowry's healthy and Adebayo's now in his fifth
Tucker,
year,
yeah.
and PJ Tucker, we didn't even mention him. I mean, the interesting matchup in this series, well, though won't be really interesting, but PJ Tucker and Grant Williams are like the same player.
Yes.
Sturdy defenders, both look like outside linebackers who can shoot.
One complains a lot more to the referees, though, I'll say.
Grant Williams complains more than any player in the league, considering his level of play. Like, I mean, I know LeBron bitches and moans a lot, and Tatum does, and all the stars do.
Yeah, but you live with the stars doing it. Like, Tatum complains too much, but it's like, okay, he's your best player. Like, whatever.
Yeah,
you just
don't get a T, Jason. We'll make sure that you can get back and sit down and cool off. Whereas with Grant Williams, it's like, you're not going to get superstar calls because you ain't a superstar, even though you went 7 for 18 from 3 yesterday and you're the team's leading scorer. But that's an interesting matchup. Grant Williams is kind of the younger version of PJ Tucker, 6'5", 250, and they'll bottle you up and do everything they can defensively and then hit a big three. I like the Celtics in 6. I think they split Miami. They split back in Boston. And then I think the Celtics win game 5 in Miami and then wrap it up in game 6 at TD Garden and move on to the finals for the first time in 12 years.
I would love it, Sap. Nothing would make me happier. All right, let's look at this Western Conference Finals then before we get out of here. Dallas and Golden State. We know Golden State inside and out because this is what, Sap, their 6th conference finals in 8 years, something like that.
Yeah, they went to 5 straight finals, and then they had some injuries for 2 years, and here they are again. Yeah, 6 conference finals in 8 years. The Celtics are going to what? Their 4th in 6 years.
Yeah.
The only difference is Golden State wins championships, and the Celtics sometimes feel like the Green Bay Packers losing.
Right, they got to get over that hump. But so we know Golden State really, really well. They do have some new additions from when they were winning championships. Jordan Poole and Andrew Wiggins, chief among them. Their fatal flaw to me, Sap, is they are just a small team, and they struggle to defend the paint. You saw Steven Adams had a massive impact once he came back to the Grizzlies lineup, and even though the Grizzlies lost, he was very successful in sort of dominating the paint. The Mavericks, fortunately for Golden State, don't really have a guy who is going to play in the paint unless they decide to play Boban a lot of minutes. Luka is going to do what he's going to do, but can the role players on Dallas do anything successfully against Golden State, considering that they kind of play to Golden State's advantage and that they have really good wing defenders?
Mm-hmm. It's going to be a tough call. I think Luka, because Golden State's small, will be able to get to the basket. I don't think people realize how physical Luka is. He's a moose. I mean, he's 6'7". I think when he came into camp, he was about 270, 280. He was clearly out of shape. He must play at 240. I mean, he's a big dude. He's not like chiseled like LeBron or lithe like Giannis. He's kind of blocky and big and strong, and he's got like a big ass and he knows how to use it. I think he's going to be able to get to the basket a lot. Now, we'll see how much Draymond Green plays on him. He could throw Wiggins on him a little bit. I don't think you want to put Clay on him. He's too big for Clay. Kuminga could be someone who gives you 12, 14 minutes a night off the bench to contest.
That's who Barkley said he wants to guard.
I'll tell you, the scary thing about Golden State, Jet, is they have obviously the core of Curry, Thompson, Draymond. Now you got Wiggins and Poole. This kid Kuminga, look, I don't think he's going to be quite Kawhi Leonard, but he's got a lot of similarities to Kawhi Leonard, 6'7", really wiry, good defender. Once he develops his offensive game a little bit, he's going to be a stud. Yeah, I would put Kuminga on Luka for, again, you split it up. You can't just say, okay, you're going to cover Luka for 36 minutes. That's idiotic. You're going to foul out. You got to rotate guys on him. And again, there's a lot of pick and roll situations, so things change. But I think Luka can physically overwhelm Golden State because that's the way he plays. You got Draymond out there who's going to be in the middle of everything, as is always the case with him. The thing about this series that was interesting is, look, Memphis didn't have Ja Morant for the second half of this series, and they lost 2 really close games.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know how Dallas is in closing games because their wins over Phoenix were really comfortable. I mean, that was the weirdest series ever. Like, whoever won.
All blowouts. Yeah, it was all blowouts.
So I don't know how Dallas closes. Now, if there's close games, I kind of like Luke at the end because his ability to make shots, and also how great a passer he is. Now it comes down to Dinwiddie or whoever else to make a big three. That's going to obviously decide the game. I ultimately like Golden State. I'm rooting like hell for Dallas because as a LeBron James fan, Dallas winning the championship is probably the best narrative. So, but all kidding aside, I think it's going to be a really good series, but I think Dallas falls just a little bit short because Golden State just has too many things out there that you can't defend. And I think it'll be a close series, but in the end, Golden State wins at home in Game 7.
I have Golden State in 6. I don't think this is certainly not the Warriors team that was like, petrifying to play against from a couple of years ago. It's still very good, but it's unfortunate for somebody who like me who doesn't really like them that they're not playing Phoenix, because I think Phoenix with Ayton, though that we're going to talk about what the hell's going on there at another podcast, would really be able to dominate the Warriors. And I don't like Dallas's personnel in terms of how they match up against Golden State. I think again that Luka will be able to dominate. I think you can say that about any team. I think he's going to be able to dominate that team, but I don't think they have the rest of the roster to be able to take advantage of the weaknesses of Golden State. And that is dominating in the paint, winning the rebounding battle significantly and scoring in the paint. I don't see that they have a guy who can help them do that outside of Luka. Luka can score anywhere. So I just don't love the matchup. I do think that they have the best player on the court, and that always gives you a chance in the NBA. But if Dallas is going to win, they're going to have to find a way to win the rebounding battle in every game. And they're also going to have to shoot threes efficiently. So Golden State defends the three, like you said, very well. So does Dallas. The Mavericks are going to have to they have to have these role players play above their head, and Golden State knows how to win these types of series, obviously, and their best defenders are wing defenders, and the best types of players that Dallas has are wing players. So I like that. I like that matchup for Golden State. And again, I like you, Sap. I'm rooting for Dallas. But I think the Warriors will be able to take this in 6. Though the one thing too about them, Sap, is like you said in that Memphis series, like Memphis's roster. I know they had a great record without John Morant too, but it's like they didn't have anybody that's like really scares you when Morant was off the court, and yet Memphis was able to play with them. Right. So I don't really know what that's about. Golden State has been accused, and I think accurately, of being massive front runners. So I could see Dallas, who does sometimes get off to hard starts. Hell, you saw it the other game. They were up by 30 before you blinked an eye in Game 7. If Dallas can start hot in these games too, I do think that there's a degree of quit in the Warriors.
Yeah, they'll quit in that particular game because they're veteran enough to know
in that game.
Yeah, it's not the Tour de France. So if they lose by 37, who cares? They start the next game up. That's what being a veteran team is really all about, because okay, let's forget it. The Celtics, Lakers, and again, sorry to bring up the old days, but they would have knock them down, drag out series, go 6-7 games, and there'd be several blowouts. I mean, the Lakers won Game 3 of the '84 Finals by, I think, 30 points. They just blew out the Celtics, and everyone was like, "This is going to be a 5-game series." Well, in Game 4, the Celtics came back from a 10-point deficit and won, and then after that, you're like, geez, the Lakers appear to be the better team. They've outplayed them for 4 games, and yet it's 2-2. So now it becomes a 3-game series. Veteran teams can do that because they know how to just put behind them what just happened. That's why I give the Celtics massive credit. I mean, Game 5 was a disaster. That felt like
Sap, we did the show after it. And I said I didn't think that they could win. You had them still coming back, but I thought they were dead.
I just thought they were better than Milwaukee. I mean, I kind of played around with the idea they'll go into Milwaukee and win Game 6, and then Game 7. Oftentimes, I'll just lean to whoever has the best player. So I thought Milwaukee could win Game 7, but it was never really a contest. I had to talk you off the ledge after Game 5, and I'm like, I was impressed by that. Marcus Smart blew Game 5, right? A horrible last minute. After that, he was outstanding in Game 6 and 7. We asked Tatum to step up a la LeBron in Game 5 in the 2012 Eastern Conference Finals against the Celtics, and look, he pretty much
best
did.
Game
right?
Of his career. I think that was the best game of his career.
Absolutely. They needed it. It was on the road, and it was a tightly contested game, and he
Giannis was going off, and he had to save that off,
Yeah. I mean, any game that if Tatum plays Giannis to a draw, the Celtics should win because if you take those two players off their respective teams, the Celtics are better. So I give the Celtics a lot of credit for that. So I think the Celtics will beat Miami in 6. I think Golden State will beat Dallas in 7, although we're both rooting for Dallas. I think Dallas-Boston would be kind of a cool series. I'm sure the networks are hoping for Boston-Golden State. Yeah. I know the national media would like to see Miami because they'd rather spend time in Miami than Boston. And I get that.
Well, Boston's very nice in the springtime. So
yeah, it is. It's really, really nice. It's pretty much like March in other places. But I think that's what the media probably wants. But I think the networks, in terms of a draw, the Celtics still a pretty massive brand in Golden State.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Right there with the Lakers as the 2 biggest brands in the league. So that would be a fascinating finals. And we've been always talking about that. Like, well, if the Celtics can break through LeBron, they'll play Golden State. And they never did. And you always felt they matched up pretty well against Golden State because they could defend a 3, and they always would beat Golden State. Remember,
no one has played better against Golden State the past
amazing,
6-7 years than the Celtics. And just go look it up. Look at the record, the winning percentage in Boston, in Golden State. Celtics play Golden State well. Golden State would rather see Miami than Boston. That's how it goes.
Yeah. It's going to be great, though. I mean, like I said, I don't remember seeing the Final Four teams this close in terms of records, right?
Yeah.
I mean, 2 53-win teams, a 52-win team, and a 51-win team. And the 2 best teams record-wise got bumped out in Phoenix and Memphis. And then you had, Philadelphia had 51 wins as well. So you had all these teams that were kind of jumbled together. Milwaukee had 51 wins. So you had every team left had at least 50 or more wins, and look how close these 4 teams are. I think in Vegas, Golden State's a slight favorite because they're considered a stronger favorite over their opponent than the Celtics are over Miami.
Right.
But throw a blanket over these 4 teams, and I still think the best player left is Luka, not by a lot.
Agree.
Steph's pretty good, and Jason Tatum's pretty good, and look, Jimmy Butler's playing out of his mind. So, each team comes at you with a superstar, but I think Luka's the guy who can impact the game, especially offensively, in more ways than anyone.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. I think that when you have the best player on the court, even though obviously you can make a case for Steph, I do think Luka's passed him at this point. You have a chance in a series. And we've seen it happen before. I don't think Dallas should have beaten Phoenix considering their records in the regular season and the makeup of the 2 rosters. And why did Dallas win? Because they had the best player in the court, and it wasn't close. He was the best player in the court by a mile. By
far. And look at, I know we're going to do a postmortem on Phoenix, and we'll talk about Chris Paul, how poorly he played down the stretch. But if you were drafting Golden State and Dallas, like an open draft, Luka would be the first pick. You could make a case that the next 5 players drafted would be from Golden State, right? Steph, Clay, Draymond, Poole, even Wiggins. I mean, Wiggins is probably the 5th best player on Golden State.
I'd take all those guys over Dinwiddie and Brunson.
Dinwiddie, yeah. I mean, so that's what Luka's facing. I think it's a great comparison to LeBron's 4th year when he dragged Cleveland to the finals to what Luka's doing right now. And in the conference finals that year, he beat a Detroit team that had championship DNA, kind of like,
and had been to the finals the year prior.
Right. So, maybe there's a chance there.
Again, it's the NBA. It's always going to be star driven. If you have the best player, even if you have a suboptimal roster, which Dallas does, you have a puncher's chance. And because Luka's that good. And if they do lose in this series, which both of us think they are going to, they're going to have a very interesting offseason too, because I texted this to you, I think yesterday, they are so close. If they just get a reasonable facsimile of an all-star next to Luka, they could rip off titles, plural. I really believe that. He just needs some some all-star help on his team. That's all he needs.
What about, again, this is the offseason and they're still playing, but a player like Bradley Beal, someone like that who's
hell yeah. If Bradley Beal if you just plugged him onto this Dallas Mavericks team, they would win the title this year.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, because Luka is such a great passer. Again, very few players.
It doesn't matter what position. I'm saying, Sap, any type of all-star.
Anybody.
You put him next to Luka. It doesn't matter what position it is.
We thought Porzingis would be that guy, and he wasn't. And I don't think they ever really meshed. And Porzingis is a disappointment. I mean, he's had a lot of injuries, and it's obviously affected his game. But there's very few guys I've ever seen who are elite scorers and elite passers. Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant weren't. They weren't elite passers. They were obviously elite scorers. But elite scorers and passers, Bird, LeBron,
Sure.
Harden, and Luka. Those are like four guys that come to mind of guys who could lead the league in scoring and assists. And I know Westbrook
Trae Young
did that. Yeah, Trae Young, although, again, because of his lack of size, I mean, I think that there's a little bit of a difference between him and those other guys. But, yeah, that's another one. I mean, Steph is a guy that's an outstanding passer, but not necessarily at that level. But, like Harden, although he seems to be washed up at this moment, very few guys are elite scorers and elite facilitators, and Luka's one of those guys. Giannis, not so much, because he's a really good passer, but he's not at the same level as, say, Luka or LeBron or Bird or Harden.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And that's what makes him, at this level right now where he's carrying, again, a suboptimal roster to the Western Conference Finals. And I don't think that anybody is saying they have no chance of winning it. So that, that's credit to Luka. And someone we haven't mentioned, Sap, before we wrap up here, Jason Kidd's done an excellent job coaching this team.
Yeah,
really good.
Well, I mean, he didn't do a great job in Brooklyn, his first coaching job. He didn't do a really great job in Milwaukee, because once he left, they started winning, 60 games a year. But again, he spent
Third time's a charm.
Third time's a charm, and he spent.
I don't want to hear where this is going, Sap. I don't want to hear where it's going.
Eric Spoelstra coached LeBron, became maybe the best coach in the league. Ty Lue coached LeBron, became one of the top 3 coaches in the league. Now Jason Kidd, who was a disaster in his first 2 places, spends a year or 2 with LeBron. Interesting that now he's one of the best coaches too.
Okay, so by that logic, you expect the Sacramento Kings to be good next year because Mike Brown coached LeBron, absolutely. And he's now going to coach the Kings. Yeah. So if he's going to be the man who breaks the seeming, I think it's like 30 years now drought for the playoffs. Actually, I think it's 16 for the Kings. So hey, listen, we'll see if your logic pays dividends there. Seth.
And if you need a coach, go get Frank Vogel too, because 3 years with LeBron.
He's got the touch now, the LeBron touch.
Hang around LeBron, it's like really good cologne. It gets on you. It smells good.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's going to do it for us. Those are our conference finals previews and everything like that. Again, stick with us all postseason long in this week as we're going to do some postmortems for these other teams, react to the games, tons of stuff and tons of basketball still left to be played, which is fantastic. And make sure you find the show wherever podcasts are found. The Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap. That's all you have to type in. You can find us on YouTube at youtube.com/Jet Stryer. Make sure you check out our social medias at JohnSap25, at Jet Stryer. And thank you to Full Press Coverage for presenting us. And we will talk to you later in the week. See you, everybody.